Hello, bonjour.
Hey, bonjour. Comment allez-vous?
We are in we're not in Paris. I am in Paris. Nirmal's on his way
Yeah.
to Paris in a few
Tu es
days
à Paris, Bret. Tu es
to
Paris, Bret.
Paris. I've learned chien and cheval. I've learned dog, cat, horse.
Because
Duolingo
those
doesn't
are
start off
important.
with greetings. It starts off with you learning. All right. We are here for your questions. So while we are
Yes.
entertaining, we are really here for your questions to answer them. And we're waiting for those questions. So KubeCon is next week. But before we get to
Yes.
some of that stuff, let's just go through the announcements. I think I need like a theme for announcements, like a little
Like
jingle
a
for
flourish.
announcements. Yes,
Yeah.
like something more than a
Ta-da! Announcements.
maybe it's the bike horn. We're coming in hot with the announcements.
Yeah.
Announcements are really like if you've been here before, if you watched this live, over 250 episodes. We
Yes.
have um, we have a few things.
Would you be technically today a foreign correspondent? I think. Yes. Out in the
I'm
field.
coming. I'm coming in hot. I'm coming in from overseas.
There we go. That's
All
awesome.
right. So, okay, yes, this is our
What?
podcast. So,
Yeah.
why
Where
are we
are we?
here?
What is this?
Why are we here? We're the cloud native DevOps weekly live stream that you can
Yes.
not just learn things about cloud native and specifically DevOps, but you can also maybe on occasion be entertained. We often have guests, about on average every other week, every 2 or 3 weeks. Like we have a lot of guests. Nirmal brings on his friends, I bring on my friends, and then we find the correspondent goes out and finds excellent people, especially at KubeCon, which Nirmal and I will be at next week. So if you
Yes.
want to catch up on the podcast, oh, I don't know why I did that. Um, this show, not this Q&A one, but when we have the interesting guests on, that becomes a
Yes.
podcast. You can get all the links below. You can do that. You can, if I go over here, I got too many tabs open. We also have a newsletter. This newsletter is about the show and all the other content that I create, and maybe someday what Nirmal creates. He creates stuff too. He's on this show. But, maybe every once in a while when he puts a blog post out, I should highlight it. I should,
Yeah.
share things that you do. You
We'll
writing
get
anything?
there.
Are you doing anything with AWS there?
Sometimes, yeah, and we'll get some stuff out. We'll get some
Okay.
stuff out there, and I guess I'll ask the audience if you want to hear anything from me, but we'll get something on there.
Well, we
Um,
certainly have your friends at AWS, and you're certainly
yes,
a very important container dude. I'm not sure that's the official title
container
at
dude.
AWS. Um, but I was thinking we should have a newsletter about you and your world, like
Ah,
your
okay.
past conference talks. Those are all on the internet. Your one about the human side of DevOps and stuff
Yeah,
is timeless. Like if we could find that, that would be great to share with people.
I appreciate that, and I'm getting some questions about that again. So I might have to kind of circle back to that if I might pick the parlance of our time,
Yeah,
and but
that's the kind of one that you can just act like it's new. You can just like
ooh.
re- submit it to KubeCon, like, hey, look at this cool talk.
Kind of like 90s fashion is new again. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. You can wear some Jordans on stage, the classic '80s Jordans, and then they'll be just retro for the whole day.
There we
By the
go.
way, we also have a Discord server,
Amazing.
and in our Discord server, you can find out what's going on. For example, all of our events, including today's, then next week's live stream, as well as coming High Fiver monthly chats. So check that out.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
that's like 17,000 something people in there. So if you're not in our Discord server, why aren't you in our Discord server? You should totally be there. And I think
Mhm.
that's it for announcements. Oh, one last, not last, but another reminder.
Yeah. So this is coming up. Essentially, I guess in less than a month. Oh my! Oh boy! Oh boy! We've got a full program. Yeah. As if there's not enough things going on. We've got a full program. If you're in the Raleigh, Durham area of North Carolina, USA. We're hosting a DevOps Days Raleigh. It's our ninth one. Um, and we've got a great lineup. We've got some awesome workshops. We've got some awesome talks. If you're in the area, or if you plan to, if you want to travel out here, come join us at DevOps Days Raleigh. It's a volunteer run conference, 9 years, and going on strong, and would love to see you there. So check that out at the link that we'll post at some point in the chat. And then the other thing is KubeCon next week. So Bret and I will be there. We're planning on streaming live, right, Bret? You're figuring it all out, right?
Yes, sure.
Yes. So look out for an announcement on the live stream from KubeCon with Bret and myself. We're gonna give our take on what's going on at KubeCon Paris next week, and also I'm speaking at KubeCon on the Wednesday at the 5:30 p.m. European Standard Time, or Central. What is it?
Central European Standard Time.
Standard Time, 5:30, and I'll have to find the location. But if you're at KubeCon, come check out my talk if you are able to, and also come find us. We'll probably be walking the expo hall a little bit, and we'll be doing a live stream. So come say hello. We always love meeting folks in real life, right? We talk about this, Bret, all the time.
That's true.
That's true. We only see each other in real life when it's a conference, so thankfully those exist.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for all these conferences, we would not know each other. So
yeah,
it's important to go.
And one last thing, I'm sporting the swag. So if you are if you like DevOps, we have this awesome Heart DevOps t-shirt and some other swag. You can find the link to Bret's loot box. Yep, that's it right there. So come take a selfie with us at KubeCon in your favorite Bret swag or Docker swag. Do you think you're going to be able to find new plushies this time, Bret?
I might be able to find some. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some plushie. It's like, we should maybe just have a whole show about the plushie game at KubeCon, and maybe we should do our. By the way, just let's wrap this up in Discord. If you're going to a conference and you want to find other cloud native DevOps people that are going to that conference, jump in to the conference channel on our Discord server. That's right above us. That's the link, and let everybody know, or see if anyone else is going there. Nubo will not be at Paris, unfortunately, and I'm going to have to give that. Please hold while I give it a.
No, he says I will be.
Oh, he did. Oh, I will be. Well, then
I was going to say, yeah, there we go. You get some Foxy. That's awesome.
All right.
So there's going to be some of us there. So come say hello. The other thing is, like, at the expo hall, we have some of my friends are presenting demos at the AWS booth. If you're interested in some of the awesome Gen AI on Kubernetes demos and other topics around the open source Carpenter project and all the cool things in the AWS Kubernetes ecosystem or world, come check out those demos. And there's also lots of other talks and cool things happening at KubeCon from a lot of our friends, right, Bret? Like Docker captains. Maybe if we were a little bit more on top of it, maybe we could put together a list of like the folks that we know are going to be there. But there's a lot of really cool talks, and also the co-located events this year. It's like a dozen of them, plus co-located events on Tuesday. But yeah, lots of activity, and we'll be reporting back to all of you on what we see there at KubeCon next week.
Yeah. So the rule here is show up next week for the live stream from that floor, and we will do our best. I think each time we do it, we get better at talking about sort of the theme, like what software are we seeing in the booths, what are the highlights of people's announcements, new startups, things that, things going 1.0 or being released into stable or graduated status. Like that's the kind of stuff that we are trying to focus on. So that, and we, in the nice thing about our live show next week will be the special guests that randomly show up, or we plan them, or they just stop by to be on the show. That's actually one of my favorite parts. There was another thought I just had about it. Now I can't remember. That's all right. So the point is conferences. The conferences.
Yes.
So I think one of my goals for the Discord, back to the Discord for a second, is for us to have 2 people in the Discord that, not us, but like another conference or something that we're not able to attend, 2 other people in the Discord server to meet in real life that found each other on the Discord server, and take a picture and put it back in there. That would be chef's kiss.
Ooh,
chef's kiss. That would be awesome.
French chef kiss.
A French chef kiss. I don't know how to say kiss in French. Someone look that up for me. So what are we doing on the show? We're here to talk about tools and techniques and products of DevOps. And Martin, by the way, hello, Martin, one of our regulars, been here a long time. I appreciate you showing up again. We are here having fun before KubeCon. Nirmal and his family is having fun after KubeCon. We're having our fun before KubeCon. My mom came with me, her sister came with us, and we're in an Airbnb for the week. So you can see, I didn't bring this from home. This is a costume I picked up on the tourist circuit here in Paris. So I thought that would be fun to do. I'm also sitting here regretting my fashion choice because it's actually wool and quite hot. So I feel like I'm definitely in a studio where all the lights are on me and I'm just trying to keep the sweat from coming down my face.
You're looking good. You're looking good, Bret. It's all about the look. It's all about the look.
I'm feeling shiny. But yes, you're right. I mean, I am in the capital of you look good, but it may not feel good to wear it, but you look good, you doing it. So I think we just did a bus tour, so I got all the fashion places. I know where they are. I'm going to go shopping later and see if I can't spruce myself up a little bit.
So Bret Beret from Balenciaga, something like that.
That's my alter ego. Once I get my French accent and a little bit more French, that'll be my alter ego. That'll just bust out whenever we're over here. Very good.
Do you want to just kind of cover some recent announcements, Bret, in the news?
I have a few. Do you have a few?
I was going to highlight. This is like really hot off the press, like just a couple hours old. Hot. Chain guard images are now available on Docker Hub. Was that what you?
That was literally the thing I was pulling up. So
I beat you. I
mean, we talk about chain guard a lot on this show, so it's only fair that we talk about the recent announcement. Congratulations! I'm sure that was a ton of work in order to get there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that the integrity before you become official images. You have to work with Docker, and of course, chain guard is very Docker friendly. I mean, they're all obviously pro container since that's their focus, but they've sort of made their name in the secure images. Whereas, honestly, if I make a new course today, all the default images I'm going to have you use are going to be chain guard images if I can make them work. Like, they don't cover every possible product in chain guard, but their images are, I think, better than Alpine because I feel like they're more usable and they have less Alpine quirks in containers. And then, because, if you've seen me talk in a conference talk, you've heard me rant about BusyBox and various things inside of Alpine in a container image. No judgment on the Alpine project itself. They have a great Linux OS. It's just the way that it's used inside of a container image can sometimes be problematic when you're running traditional software. So, chain guard, up that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that don't know, can you just give a quick, 2-second on what chain guard, what is chain guard? What are the chain guard images?
Yeah.
What's their goal?
So, yeah, that's a great question. And actually, we're going to have them on the show next month, I think. We got chain guard maybe in April. So we're going to have them back on the show. They were here a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they were last year in October 2022, and a lot. That's an eternity ago in this world. So
Wolfie was a brand new thing. We didn't even call them chain guard images back then. And I mean, there's now at least two, if not three, Docker captains working there. So I feel like it's one of the companies where a lot of the action's going in terms of the energy of the people that have been around containers for years, if not a decade now,
Mhm.
is they're sort of leveling up our not just how you use containers, but how you build them, how you build the software that goes in them, how you security scan them, and basically that whole security supply chain, as we call it, for images
Mhm.
and software. And one of the steps in that was choosing a more secure base image with little to no CVEs in it. They kind of, I feel like they sort of led the game in the last couple of years as the zero CVE vulnerability images for your, for your Node apps, for your Python apps,
Yep.
that kind of thing. And now, but they weren't available on Docker Hub, so they weren't easily discoverable. You had to know about ChainGuard, go to their website, and you can find under, I think it's under resources. Maybe it's under, they keep changing everything. ChainGuard images, okay. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, so, you,
Well, now you
and you
can
can,
see them on Docker Hub.
that's right. You don't have to do this anymore. But if you didn't want to use Docker Hub, you can see that they have their own registry, and they do some special things with the registry around security, ensuring the integrity of the images that are there. That's the whole supply chain security situation.
Yep.
And I've enjoyed using them. It does have a little bit of a learning curve, especially if you want to add your own custom software to the image, because it's not going to use your traditional apt or Yum package managers that we're used to in maybe the Red Hat or the Debian worlds. It uses APK, and it's a little bit different in the way that you do that. But they have tons of resources. In fact, they actually have a really great guide. And we'll probably talk all about all this again when they're on the show next month. But the way to know when they're going to be on the show is to get on the newsletter,
Yes.
Bret.news. Get on the newsletter.
Subscribe
Um,
now.
like and subscribe. You can't like a newsletter, but if you could, you should totally like
I
our
mean, you
newsletter.
can like a newsletter.
You,
And arguably, people do like your newsletter,
it's
Brett.
not a one-click like; it's just a mental like. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Um,
So
I'm not
one
sure
thing I'd
what.
like to
Yeah, go
call
ahead.
out from ChainGuard, and I hope we get into this when we have them on the show, is that um, it's and this is true of a lot of technologies that we talk about, but it seems relatively easy what these images are and what they do, but they do a really like ChainGuard seems to do a really good job of simplifying and publishing these images, but there's a lot of hardcore work, right? Deep work that they're doing behind the scenes, I guess you could say, to build those images, right? It's not like just like pulling some like base image from somewhere, scanning it, and then like building the image. And they also have like a lot of open source projects and tooling that they've created and open sourced to that they use to assist in building these images. And there's a lot of pieces and such as like the APKO APCO, I don't know how to say it, but which is a tool that they let me see if I can put this in.
I like AppCo. I haven't heard it, but I like that. I haven't heard it said as a name, but I like AppCo.
APCO, yeah. So
Yeah.
APCO is a tool that that creates OCI container images from APK packages. So, you know, producing a software bill of material, SBOM, making those images fast, etc. So that's just one example. They have all these other open source tools. So
Yeah.
I, I think we're big proponents of like the open source ecosystem and also uh, making things simpler and easier to use. So, looking forward to that ChainGuard session or ChainGuard live stream in the future for sure.
Yeah. I feel like their tooling, while excellent, is it almost feels like a little bit of a different world from the Docker world because, like you said, you have this APKO. APK is the installer, which if you're an Alpine person, you're familiar with that a little bit. They have Melange, which is another tool that you use for helping to build these images. So it's not something that is the same as like using a compose file or a Docker file and stuff like that. And I feel like and they have an academy, so we were just showing that on screen.
Oh yeah,
Um, and oh, This one? No?
There
Academy.
it
There you
is.
go. Yeah, and so the Academy, I haven't actually gone through all this stuff yet, but it's quite comprehensive. I've looked through a lot of it and read some of the
Mhm.
articles, but this is kind of a trend. I feel like we've now got this. We've got enough companies that do this in cloud native, where they have their own sort of training and education site, and it may include docs, but they're calling it an academy. And like Traffic does this. I think I'm sure there's other ones that I've looked at, and they call it academy. Think of it as a learning center more than just documentation. And they have one there, and there's multiple pages here that I reference when I'm working with their images. So they have courses, right? Like this is some cool stuff. Traffic's very similar in their view. They have video courses, and it's all free.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a lot going on here. So I feel like even if you're not going to use ChainGuard specifically, but if you just want to understand container images, Docker images for Kubernetes or whatever, and you want to up your security game, I think that's what they're really going for with their academy, is to just sort of raise the level of everyone's understanding of, like you said, SBOMs, and how do you build things, and how do you ensure, how do you validate source code builds and stuff like that? How do you put this stuff in your images, like the SBOM files and other things that are the, I'm trying to remember the right word, attestations for your
Ooh,
images.
yeah, that's a great word. Um, and it's becoming more and more important for all of us to figure out what's running where, right? And like that's a big concern these days, and this helps get closer to that kind of ideal state of being able to attestate, prove
Yes.
the governance and the controls and the compliance and the vulnerability squashing and the provenance and the pick another word of what's running in your environment and how your applications are being supported and the runtimes, etc. So yeah, so that's one big thing that just like is hot off the presses today. What was another thing, Brett? I've
Yeah,
got
it's
another
actually.
one, but
I'm going to go back to chat for a second, because that's why you're all here, right? Not just to see us talk, but
yeah,
to ask questions, have conversations. OnSecure, our friend Martin has talked about, of course, huge Docker Swarm fan, runs a bi-monthly Docker Swarm meetup in our Discord server over there above Nirmal. So if you're interested
yes.
in Docker Swarm as an alternative to Kubernetes, there's still plenty of people running it in production, still plenty of people that join our meetup. And I mean, our Docker Swarm channel is one of our most active. I actually think there is a case for a Docker Swarm talk at KubeCon. It seems like those of us that have been around a while, like Nirmal and I, Martin, others, we understand that there was people labeled it a war of the orchestrators. 2016, 2015, 2014. In those years, we were all loving containers, but we wanted to run fleets of servers and orchestrate all of those containers together. So we had 5, 6, 7. I think at some point I was counting at close to a dozen. We had, remember that Azure one that they announced? That I don't even know if that's still maintained anymore. We've got Nomad out there. We have Classic Swarm. We have Swarm Mode, which is the thing we call Docker Swarm now. And so there was a lot of, we had another one too. They turned into they were a company, and they I can't remember the name of them. It started with an M, I feel like. But
Mesosphere.
Mesos was another one, yeah. So we had, and then you had run Kubernetes on Mesos. Remember that whole thing? So we had
Yes.
all these different experiments, and how do you arrange a fleet of servers, and then all the concerns that come with that while running containers and managing all those workloads. And Kubernetes is clearly the most popular. So if you think of it as a war, Kubernetes won. But when something wins in tech, that doesn't mean that the others go away. It just means it's the one. And I really think that a lot of times it isn't even the number of users. In this case, I would maybe argue that Kubernetes won because it wasn't just users. It was actually a marketplace for other companies to create products on top of and then profit off the Kubernetes platform. And Swarm didn't really have that. Swarm didn't have a great API.
Uh,
It didn't have the ability for companies to make a bunch of hooks and a bunch of low level tooling that they could say like a service mesh in Swarm or whatever. And also Swarm was really easy to use. So it didn't need other tools to make it easier with all these dashboards and management systems. And I mean, you can have one, but you didn't necessarily have to have one. And anyway, that's just my opinion. But we always get asked the Swarm question. No one asked us, so I should shut up now. But yes, the point was, Martin. Yes,
yeah,
talk at DockerCon or talk at KubeCon. I would totally.
I vividly remember those days, and there was also, wasn't there like a little documentary about Kubernetes released?
Yes.
On YouTube.
Yes,
that's a great primer on what the intent of the Kubernetes open source community was and is. I think at its heart, it's still there, but it's definitely changed a lot in terms of the maturity of the community and the ecosystem over the last is it decade? Are we at 10 years now of
yes.
Of Kubernetes? Is this the 10th? Is this the 10th year? Yeah.
It's the 10th year.
Oh, Bret. We've been talking about this for 10 years. That blows my mind.
I know. Well, I haven't been talking about it for 10 years because the first couple of years I didn't touch it because I wasn't ready for it. The couple of years after that, I was intimidated by it, and I liked Swarm because it was simple and it met the needs of the people I was working with at the time. And then finally, like somewhere around 2018, I was like, okay, I concede. I started working on a course. I started actually training myself, offering it up to clients and stuff like that. So I feel like I was kind of late to the game on Kubernetes because I was so deeply invested in Docker that Kubernetes just really felt very complex and very traditional software-y to me. Whereas things like Swarm that did automatic mutual TLS and it had a encrypted secret store and it just felt more modern and user-friendly with opinions. It had opinions. Sometimes it had one way to do things. Anyway, so yeah, it's not been 10 years for me, but it's been 10 years for the project. I'm going to throw out the documentary, by the way. Yeah, we had I'm not going to play it. I recently had one of our videos demonetized because we played another YouTube video on it. So I'm not going to do that. I doubt it would happen with this channel. But there is a great 2-part Kubernetes documentary. The Honeypot company, by the way, they make they're not just, it's not just Kubernetes there. They do Node.js. They have all these great long form. They have Ruby on Rails in case you're into that, the origin of Ruby on Rails and how that took place on, with DHH and team. So there's a lot of really neat stuff there if you're interested in the sort of the history of tech. CEO of GitHub. Yeah, it's just the React documentary in case you're a front-end developer. Yeah, there's just, check that out. Tech World with Nana, who's been on our show, has her own, 10-minute video on what it's like to be choose a DevOps career, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing that she had it. And Prometheus, the documentary, like just how Prometheus actually happened, because we didn't really have. I can think of Nagios. I think like there's a couple old school monitoring solutions out there that we had decades ago, and they were open source, and they're still around. They're still great, especially, but they're more traditional IT, more of an infrastructure. And Prometheus sort of was like, hey, we're going to monitor everything, but we're definitely going to focus on applications and metrics coming out of your systems like that. And
a different model. Moment. It was like a pull. It's the scraping pull model for data is was a different way of thinking about collecting this data. And there's some really cool things. And Prometheus is like a whole nother topic. We should definitely like dig into that and have someone. I have some people in mind for digging into that topic for sure.
I would love to. We're going to talk offline about that because I'd love to have a show that's about not just getting started with Prometheus, because I feel like there's plenty of stuff out there on that, but maybe some of the origin and more of the mindset and because honestly, when I heard about their poll or their polling process, I I was weirded out by it. They convinced me pretty quickly because they talk about scale and performance and
Yeah.
all that. But at first, you're right. It was very new. It was a new idea for that method, which is the opposite of every other thing I've ever used. And so, yeah, um, it was an interesting application decision that I don't know. There's always pros and cons, but I feel like that one was pretty good.
Yeah. It looks like we have some questions, and not to dismiss, but also I think open telemetry is similar right now. Is kind of uh, having its moment in the last few years as well, and maturing, and uh, goes well with like the Prometheus story as well. Do we have some questions? Let's see. We've got Dan. Can I use free tier AWS to create an EKS cluster? How do I learn EKS? I put some links in the chat for you, Dan. The latest on EKS pricing link. It, I don't believe there's a free tier, but that gives you some more information around EKS. And we also have a EKS digital badge, which I was involved with creating last year. I did the whole entire observability module in there. So, Bret, you better look out. I've created some training content. Actually, in all
You're
honesty,
coming for
Bret,
me. You're coming for me.
in all honesty, Bret, it just made me even appreciate all the amazing work you've done in your Docker and Kubernetes courses and your other courses because it was a humbling experience creating, recording, editing, vetting, and the assessment creation for that content. Uh, it was way more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
uh,
I would love to talk to someone like Nigel who's written books and made long form courses because I often wonder, is this actually harder than a book? Because most people in tech that write books, and I respect them all. Um,
Absolutely.
that it's sort of a thankless job, right? Like you rarely meet people that have read your book unless you're Nigel, and you have to go through such a lengthy process. You don't really make the money to recover it because you're not writing a New York Times bestseller like you're
Yeah.
writing an O'Reilly book or a Manning book or something like that or a Packet book. And I've always wondered because at least they stay in one domain where I feel like with video courses you start out writing, you create sort of
Yeah.
a syllabus, you're documenting things, you're putting this all down on paper, and then if you're going to read, you're definitely putting it on paper because you're going to write your teleprompter, right? You're going to write all that down. I don't use the teleprompter, which means I have to do way more editing because I have to edit out all of my just ramblings and dumb crap. So then you end up going from like being a good writer and a good syllabus maker to being a good person on camera. If you're going to do that, you don't have to necessarily put your face in camera, but I feel like that's the way to go today, right? It's 2024. You should be on camera, and then you have to be a good editor, or you have to find a good editor that really knows the difference between what's not important and what's important, because nobody wants to watch a 30-minute video about the Docker run command, right? They want a 5-minute video or a 7-minute video. I mean, there's a lot to it that I think I even still today, whenever I go back and have to edit or remake something, I just shake my head and think, what am I doing? Why am I here? I want to be deploying servers, not talking about it on a video. So it's a it's not. I wouldn't say it's a thankless job. I guess that's because if you get people that are online and they buy your stuff or watch your stuff, they'll usually tell you about it.
It's not a thankless job, but it's interesting because the book writing, I've not done it, but I know, like Bret, we know a lot of folks that have, and it is hard to do. So shout out to all those people that have written books, and I know some folks and friends that are currently writing their first, in the process of writing their first technical books, and I wish you all the best of luck and speed and doing that. Um, but those books do have big influences on a lot of, like, some of them become kind of the main reference material that everyone kind of just like knows, like like enterprise integration patterns is a big one. There's all the Brendan Gregg books around observability and like tracing and all that. I mean, master tier of content, and I don't think we should discourage folks from pursuing book writing, because I think one thing that it does is it forces, like, if you go through that process, it forces you to really think deeply about that topic. And that's where a lot of the coolness comes from all the things that we see online. But anywho, we have a lot of questions lining up already since we're just rambling on.
No, that's
Um,
you're actually hitting a point there that's pretty important too, because like they say, if you want to learn something, teach it, right?
yes,
And I think,
yes,
especially, I mean, I know a lot of us were, I don't want to speak about something or teach something or write about something until I feel thoroughly confident that I could answer a lot of varying questions about it. I think speaking at a conference is probably the most, I mean, once you get over just the speaking part, which I've had 20 years experience and I started with, a room of five. So it's not something that I just went to a big conference and spoke for the first time. I actually took, I went to like my crew at my office, and there was five of us, and we would speak at lunch. Like that was the start of it, and then it was meetups, and it was slowly
yes,
build. So
yep.
you gotta work your way up there. But I feel like writing or anything you want to do, you're going to be forced to learn it better. And that's why I actually encourage, when people are getting started, we get this question all the time about learning DevOps. And I always talk about getting your GitHub repos, like exposing what you're learning so that future employers can see it. But I don't just
Mhm.
say it for that reason. It's also because you're going to naturally learn by educating. If you put a blog post on the internet, most of us are going to not feel comfortable unless we're going to really know what we're talking about. And so we're probably going to start
Mhm.
writing and realize that we don't know what we're talking about, or we're about to think of a thing where like, maybe I should check that out to be certain that I actually know what that is before I write about it.
Absolutely.
And that always helps me. I mean, honestly, I mean, the reason, if I think back on all the things I've learned, consulting's the same way, right? Like doubly so. You definitely want to know it before you get paid to do it. And I think that when I think about Docker, I learned it originally for my own company startup that I was starting with a friend of mine. I learned Kubernetes and Swarm because I was consulting for companies that wanted to do orchestration, and I knew that
Hmm.
they were going to lean on me, so I went and learned them on my own. And then I took
Yep.
risks by saying we're gonna put this into production, knowing that I had no experience doing it. I mean, you're gonna have to
Hmm.
do the same thing in your job if you're the first one doing Docker and Kubernetes. You're gonna have to do things that you didn't have experience in. But there's all those different metrics that you do. But yeah, right. If you're gonna write a book, I think you should probably blog a lot about it first. Heck, there's really good books. Maybe not in tech. I don't know about tech, but I've read other books where the book was literally nothing but blog posts that they turned into chapters and really kind of framed it better, and then released a book that's essentially their writing. That's actually how the book The Martian got written. If you remember
Yep.
that show, he just put them all on the internet. At least most of it is blog posts. So I think there's something to be said about putting it down. That's for sure. So I just want to round that out. That's a great topic. Um, do you have
And
so? Go ahead.
yes, so plus one to what you said. In fact, in my own Docker journey, I saw a demo of Docker in the summer of 2013, but it wasn't until a year and a half later that I actually like could use it for work. So I spent that year just using it and kicking the tires and helping with the Docker documentation and creating some of that initial kind of content just to socialize it with my colleagues and within my organization and meetups and other kind of smaller things. But um, yeah, and spending the time to truly understand why, like trying to answer the whys to myself about what's important about this thing. And especially these days when you see a new hot topic or a new trend like Gen AI right now, like you can't not talk about Gen AI. So uh, reading and writing and um, taking some time to digest the information and develop some of the heuristics in my own mind about how to validate this new stuff and whether it brings value or it doesn't bring value. Um, that's like the process that we kind of are going through, and writing is integral to that process. And I'm very guilty of not doing enough of it. I don't publish a blog, um, and I hope to get around to doing something like that. But I also, I don't know if I don't know if like it has to be like a blog. There could be written content and also content in other forms that start off as written content but are actually published in other ways, right? So I think a lot of folks don't realize how much is written down for things like even our show or like the training content that you create and all the preparation that goes into all the stuff before we actually just blabber our mouths off.
Well,
um,
I was going to say real quick, just to round that out.
mhm.
The a good example is sometimes I blog. I used to blog when I first started blogging 25 years ago. I think we're about to hit 30 years of me blogging before we even had the word blogging.
Whoa.
That's a long time ago. But
Yeah.
I even have, so this is a 21-year-old post that I made that was my own documentation on how to control networking bandwidth speeds when you use
Whoa.
a FreeBSD server as a basically as a hub or a switch. Where
Hmm.
actually in this case it was a router. It was acting as a router, but it everything goes through it, and I was able to control networking speed for different devices. And I don't reference this anymore, but for years I referenced it. So like the first 10 years of writing blogs, it was really just me documenting my own fixes and solutions to my own problems.
Hmm.
The difference now is that I found that like these kind of things are great for Google, but it's very transactional. So when I started to want to care about community and people, selling courses and doing things that would sort of be evergreen and help people, I realized break fix documentation essentially wasn't going to do that, because I could see people, they would come to this and then they leave, right? Because I fixed their problem for them and they leave. So I stopped doing that, but I still actually make this kind of documentation in Notion privately, and I don't put it on the internet because it ends up usually breaking within a year or two anyway because something's changed. Um, but like nowadays people reference my swarm ports still, and some other random things that I've put on my website. But this is an old website that I don't even use anymore. But I keep it up for posterity's sake of just how long I've been doing this stuff. I talk about like remote desktop port problems and firewalls, like really old Windows stuff on that blog. But that's sort of a blast from the past. We have some excellent questions, so I'm going to shut up and get us to
We're
some
getting real
excellent questions.
philosophical.
Yeah, you answered a great one about Fluent Bit, and we should just mention Fluent Bit. Gosh, I can't even say it today. That's my favorite too. I love Fluent Bit.
Hmm.
It's sort of a rewrite of a logging tool and allows you to get your logs out fast. It has a bunch of routing rules and
Hmm.
transforming stuff that's very essential. I feel like that's definitely like maybe not probably a top 10. I feel like a utility if you need it. You don't always have to have it, but look up. That's a great recommendation. Good job, Nirmal. That's what I would have picked.
I sometimes know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's always cool when we both pick the same tool or we pick the same solution, because we both maybe have a solution, but when we agree on it, it's always fun. Um, is there? Uh, Martin's mentioning tech books get outdated very quickly. I was just going to point out that the one person who's don't is Nigel Poulton, which we just talked about a little bit ago. But he updates his Docker book, for example, every year. So like technically the book you bought does get outdated, but you can always buy the next edition. I don't know that he really tells you what changed. I don't know if it like I don't know if it's like Manning where you get digital copies of his book because he does self-publish. But like on
Hmm.
Manning, you can do the Meep or whatever it's called,
Yep.
and you can sort of get books as they're going, as they're building. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm always impressed by how much work he puts into um, renovating his book. I don't know what the right word
Updating.
there is, but I feel like
Updating.
that's a updating.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that. Um, what are the questions?
We've got an interesting question from MW uh, in terms of like techniques to improve like reading skills. um, I I think um, the way I'd answer that is everyone's different, which is not a great answer. Um, I'm a slow reader, but I also read with intent. And so I think, okay, so what does that mean, Nirmal? What does reading with intent? It means um, I don't purposely try to get through something just to get through it. Like I'm slow because I'm wanting to understand what I'm reading. And if I don't know something, which happens often, or especially like as I'm learning some of the Gen AI and machine learning stuff, like there's lots of terms and words and other things I have no idea about. So I I read about those topics with intent. I read slowly, and I go down a little bit of the rabbit holes when there's things I don't know, and like investigate and research those things just to understand, and watch a video about it, or read something else about it. I think there's some other I wouldn't call them tricks or tips, but maybe a tip, but um, g- going to the conclusion of a document first, reading the last part of a document first, seeing what the like outcome is and what the action is, and whether that makes any sense, or if it has nothing to do with what you thought the headline says. I think in this kind of clickbait headline kind of world, it's tricky to uh, you people respond just to the headline and don't really go into what the content is. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks at a higher speed. Um, I sometimes listen to an audiobook while reading the content. That helps sometimes. Some content is referenced, so I might not read it in order, and I just go to a specific chapter or a specific piece of content that I need in context. One last thing I'd say is at Amazon we have and this is kind of well known, but we're a document based culture internally at Amazon and AWS, and that means that we don't do like PowerPoint presentations inside for presenting strategy or other pieces of content. We Everything is written in documents, and there's a very very strong writing and reading culture within Amazon. And like my meetings start with a period of silence where everyone gets the document and reads the document, and then we discuss it. We put comments in the document, and so the last tip is you get better at it by just reading more. There's no like real mystery there. The more you read, the better you get at reading. How about you, Brett? It's a great question, by the way.
That's a very thorough list. I mean, I feel like we're similar than that. I don't, the special techniques list that I would talk about is, it's funny. Just yesterday, so I have the book. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna look it
that
up.
book.
I'm gonna look it up because I'm spacing on it. Um, but in the book I was reading, I brought with me. I actually brought a paper book with me because I'm trying to be more intentful and focused when I'm reading, and rather than just like scrolling on my phone, and then I get an alert, and then I go to this alert, and then I come back to the Kindle book, and I
Mhm.
scroll and I scroll. Like that was what I have done for 10 years now, since or 15 years if you include Kindle readers. So I if you're specifically interested in speed reading, obviously this isn't the place for that expertise. But what I would actually say is the first time I ever took effort at speed reading, which I would say that it did not really help me because I did not practice and take it seriously. Tim Ferriss, I'm not saying he's the right expert on YouTube or anywhere for speed reading, but he consumes a lot and has his own techniques for speed reading. And he starts out like a lot of speed readers will do, is they talk about how we're all used to reading things in our mind, like we literally sound out the
Mhm.
syllables, and that's part of the problem. Is you have to actually break yourself of that. And there's a whole. So anyway, go to YouTube, look up Tim Ferriss speed reading. He has it's knowing Tim. I'm not going to I'm not going to show the videos on stream, but knowing Tim, he'll probably have lots of references to point you to other things that he uses. And because he's someone who practices speed reading and actually uses it in his life, I feel like that's a way better expert than I'm ever going to be. But you're right. Like I think reading with intent. The book I was reading with me actually has a whole chapter on slowing life down and that most of the things we do, like I'm in the kitchen, I used to clean dishes while listening to a podcast. Now I just clean dishes. I don't do anything else other than focusing on the dishes. It's almost a zen. There's actually two books that I have on this. I'm going to actually pull them up while we're talking, while you're maybe answering the next question, because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah. So there's some other things here, and I'd like to add a technology slant to this as well, which is I think this is where things like, Olama, Bedrock, ChatGPT come in, where we now have tools where you can take a document and ask like something like Bedrock or ChatGPT, like, please summarize this, give me the key points. I think I sent this to you. There's an app, I think, is it called Recast? No, not yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Recast AI. I've been trying this out. This is not an endorsement, but just something that I've been trying out, which is a app where you can point it at an online article, and it generates a automated 2-person podcast out of the article, which is kind of mind blowing. I think we're at the early stages of this kind of stuff. That being said, just have intent. Read long form content. Read the content. I think the other thing is you have to kind of accept that you're not going to read everything that you see that might be interesting. You got to just let go of a lot of things too. At least in my opinion. There's a ton of things that I intend to read that I don't get to, and that's okay. What you're reading is likely the best thing to read at that moment. I don't know if that's, I'd like to think so.
So since we're going to wrap up not talking about tech, by the way, I just want to throw out real quick for Nubu, Kubernetes is still the thing. I think if you're referring to what Martin was talking about, he was talking about WASM. WASM doesn't replace Kubernetes. It's simply a different runtime to run applications. It's kind of like Node as a runtime to run JavaScript applications. Think of WASM as a universal runtime to run many different programming languages, all compiled down to a small thing. That can now be run in Kubernetes. I actually did a video of that like a year and a half ago with Nigel. And we did that on the for this video and for a Docker meetup thingy. But I'm gonna end with two books that I recommend. And since we're talking about like sort of reading, the purpose of learning, knowledge, and all that, so two books. The one I'm reading, which is it's actually embarrassing that I forgot what it was called. It's called The Creative Act. You can actually see I purchased it. The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. He's a very famous. He's not a musician, but he works with musicians to make some of the world's most famous music. And he's all about the journey of being able to get you to do what you're great at. He's not even exclusive to musicians. And so I'm actually using it to be inspired for my own YouTube videos and just creation of all this content that we're doing. And so that's a book that came out last year, and I am about halfway through it. It's actually it's not very long. The chapters are super short. Each one is almost like he had a thought and then just rambled on it for 3 pages. Mm-hmm. And one of them was about the purposeful focus of like just doing one thing at a time, and in all things in life, not just work, but just being deliberate, and how much more that not only can you gain enjoyment, you can gain skills faster, because you're not actually we're not able to do multiple things at a time as humans. We just think we can. And then the other one is a book I've read multiple times over decades. I recommend it all the time to people.
Never recommended it to me.
No? Well, I'm doing it now, sir. So I'm fixing my mistake there. It is actually a pretty short book. It's decades old. Yeah, 92. So it's quite old. But it's about a guy. He uses martial arts as a metaphor for describing how essentially purposeful practice, and how practice is the goal. Like the goal of many of these things in life, like to be a great chef, to be good at speed reading, to be good at tech. It's about the journey, not the destination. And he really lays the foundation for helping you understand how even the drudgery of things is really just making you better at it, and that you should really lean into anytime you think like to him, toil is actually just practice. So maybe an SRE doesn't want to read this book. He's not really into automating, but it's a very wonderful book. It's quite short, so you can read it pretty quickly. And I keep it on my bookshelf and reread it. I don't know, maybe once a decade, just to get reminded of how the joy in life is often not in the destination, but in the journey itself.
So just to close out with a little bit of tech, we had some great comments from Enshik and Siek, or Ancient. So that's the Windows in Docker, right? Running Windows inside Docker. I think this is on our list. If it's not, we should put it on our list, Bret, of things to explore in a future show for sure. I believe I saw that on our list at some point. And so thank you for that. And also, I think that covers everything. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
Covered a lot of different topics today.
I'm glad MW got their needs from that answer. Like, I think we covered a lot there, and it's, again, neither one of us are experts in that, but hey, we're all trying to be better, and then that's kind of that's the DevOps way. If we should throw out some
there we go,
some wisdom there. So I'm excited to see Nirmal in
like
3 days?
48 hours.
48
days?
Hours, something like that. 72 hours,
36
maybe?
hours, 72 hours.
Well, don't include the time differences. I can't do that math. That's hard math. But I'm in Paris, making sure it's ready for you. And indeed, sir, it is. You can come here and enjoy it. It's actually pretty great weather. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's
Perfect.
Great jacket weather. So
save a croissant for me, Bret.
I will. I'm needing them all. So you'll have like one left when you get here.
Just one.
7 a.m., 10 a.m., 4 p.m., the 3 croissant times, when everybody just stops what they're doing in place and they all just freeze and eat a croissant.
Sounds good to me.
It's actually as a citizen of France, you get a free croissant 3 times a day. I don't know if you knew that. I don't get it. I get to watch them eat it because I'm just a tourist. But thank you so much all for being here. Again, next week we're going to be live from KubeCon. Nirmal will be with me along with very special guests. I'm sure we'll have a lot of our great friends in the community on the show. And we don't even know what we're doing yet. So you're going to have to come and find out what we're doing.
Yep. So see you soon, Bret. See y'all.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
What I meant to say was au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.